A new humanitarian crisis is happening in the world, and it's happening in the country of Yemen. Yemen lies south of the Saudi Arabian border and east of Oman. It sits between the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden with a population of just over 28 million. It is now the worst humanitarian crisis stated by the United Nations, with 21 of its 28 million people needing desperate aid. How did this happen, and why haven't we noticed? Before we get to the main issue, let's go some over the issues that has brought Yemen to the state of near collapse. Yemen has been in the state of famine for quite a while now, and while drought and poor weather are partially to blame, most of it comes from cat farming. Cat takes up 40% of all Yemen's groundwater. It is a chewable, highly addictive caffeine plant that, while sold in foreign markets, is really only consumed in Yemen. This is the rough equivalent if the United States started using 40% of its groundwater to grow marijuana. Now, while we all would have a fun time, it's not recommended for a country. On top of that, Yemen is one of the poorest countries in the Arabian Peninsula, with the country generating about $1,100 in per capita GDP. In comparison, the United States is generating $59,500 in per capita GDP, a large difference. There's also some social discrimination taking place across the country, as 70% of the population are Sunni Muslims, and this includes most government officials and high-ranking officers, while 30% are Shiite Muslims, and they have been discriminated and persecuted by Sunnis for the last few decades. All these issues were brought up in 2004 when the Houthi movement originally formed. They mainly protest against discrimination and against President and dictator Ali Abdullah Saleh. They also thought he was a puppet of both the United States and Saudi Arabia. Saleh used his armed guards to murder the founder of the Houthi movement, and under the founder's brother, they left for Sadr, a northern Shiite-friendly territory. There, they fought several small battles against the Yemen military as an insurgency group for 7 years, neither side having the strength to vanquish the other. In 2011, however, the Arab Spring happened and began to change the whole game in the Middle East. Protests took place in Yemen as they did similarly in Egypt and Libya. Most wanted democratic change and for Saleh to be removed from power. The Houthis and other groups such as the Southern Movement also joined in. Despite all the protests and even Saudi pressure, Saleh refused to step down. Protesters in response bombed a local mosque where he was worshipping, critically injuring him. In an agreement led by Saudi Arabia, Saleh was removed from power and free elections were held across Yemen. His former vice president, Abdullah Mansur Hadi, was elected in 2012 with 99.6% of the popular vote voting him into office. This number may look large, however, the Houthis, along with the Saleh movement, boycotted the election. Under newly elected President Hadi, the country managed to stabilize with the government making peace with the Southern movement, and the radical Salafists and Houthis too busy fighting each other in Sadr to really care about what the government was doing. The fighting between the two took place another 2 years until early 2014 when the Houthis took full territorial control of the region and banished the Salafists from the region. The Houthis then began expanding to other neighboring governances. The Hadi government tried to subsidize Yemenis oil in order to produce as much oil as Oman and bring some much needed revenue to the country. While good in theory, in practice these drove fuel prices up, causing mass protests in the streets of big cities like Sana'a. These aforementioned protests left an open door for the Houthis. They saw an opportunity and quickly took more and more territory, even taking some key points around the capital city of Sana'a. Seeing the sudden escalation of violence, the United Nations tried to step in and stabilize the country. They offered forming a unified government of all Houthis, Hadi loyalists, and Saleh's old political party, the General People's Congress. Saleh was still having an influence in the government. All three groups could not agree on how to run the government, and the GPC left and the Houthis formed their own government. Hadi was now in an awful position. With the breakdown of the unity government, the Houthis were able to gain full control of the capital city of Sana'a. To celebrate, they orchestrated marches going around the city, and many came to join them, celebrating a time of change in the country. With the fall of the capital, the Houthis were able to gain more and more control of major population centers throughout the country. Hadi was originally placed under house arrest by the Houthis, but he escaped and fled to Aden, naming Aden the capital of his new government. The Houthis began forming their own government back in Sana'a. While fighting had been going on for quite a while now, the first actual battle of the Civil War took place at the Aden airport, where troops loyal to the Houthis under the command of former dictator Saleh fired upon a group of Hadi's soldiers. Hadi's soldiers were able to push them back and keep Aden safe for now. On top of the new civil war, radical groups ISIS and al-queda bombed mosques in the capital Sana'a, killing hundreds. This moved from a civil war into a three-way fight, with the ID government, the Houthis, and now terrorist organizations involved.
Although many other nations came to the rescue of the Haiti government, Saudi Arabia was the one pushing for it. Saudi Arabia launched thousands of troops, a mass bombing campaign, and blockaded the country from potential weapons smugglers. They did not want the country to fall under Houthi control. To help bolster their military during this crisis, the Saudi government reached a $350 billion deal with the United States for weapons, tanks, and aircraft. The United States also gives military intelligence to the Saudi government, refuels Saudi bombers bombing Yemeni cities, and has helped train thousands of ground soldiers that are currently on the ground in Yemen. To many people outside the United States, it looks like the United States is as responsible for this crisis as the Saudi Arabian government. Currently, the Saudi military, along with the Hadi government, is pushing towards Hadiyah, the major port still under Houthi control. If they capture this port, they could cut off millions from humanitarian aid and cripple the Houthi hold on the region. The civil war has taken a toll on the Yemeni country. 57,383 people have been killed in the war since 2016. 50,000 have died from starvation. About 2,400 have been killed from a cholera epidemic, stemming from malnutrition and poor hygiene throughout the country. It wasn't until recently that this war came up in Western news, especially in the United States. Hundreds of people are dying of either starvation, disease, or bullet wounds, or bombings. They need our help, and they need it now, and they need an end to this conflict. Please donate any of these resources here. They should be able to help and get aid to those in need. Thank you for watching, and now I hope you better understand the conflict that is going on in Yemen, and hopefully you are able to help.